Jayce has good intentions. We can look at most of his decisions and think, well, yeah, I can understand why you did that. You know, even if I don't agree with what you did, I still respect that you took that line of decision making. You know, he's not a scummy individual, and he definitely does try his best to put other people first. But herein lies the problem, because you see, a hero without a spine or a backbone, a hero who cannot stand for something, is simply an agent of chaos, a mercenary. Jayce as a child gets saved by a mage, we all know this. He then aspires to recreate this life-saving magical force so he too can save lives and become a hero. He then breaks the law in his endeavor to try and create magic. When you think about it, this is actually the first hint that there's something fundamentally wrong with the way Jayce wants to do things. But we brush it off because he's not really a bad guy, you know? During his trial, he blurts out that he was trying to create magic after Heimerdinger specifically told him not to do exactly that, and in doing so he ruins his chances of ever joining the academy again, or so we're led to believe. He also almost gets himself exiled by doing this, but then his mom saves him using a plea for pity, which works, so yeah. What's cool about Jayce though is that he does end up being right about hextech, so he gets mega status off of it and he ends up becoming the man of progress. However, even with all of this progress, we can still see a character who is willing to endanger others for the greater good. And we also see a character whose greater good only includes his immediate surroundings in elite class Piltover. He does everything he can to keep these people happy, but forgets that this was about the entire community, the entire world. Echo is actually one of the characters brought in to check him specifically about this, and he does it in a very different way than Heimerdinger does. You see, because the excuse with Heimerdinger is that Heimerdinger is pretty much immortal and he doesn't have the pressure of time that humans have. He's going to live for way longer than any one of them. So Heimerdinger can't grasp why humans have to innovate quickly. But with Echo, it's different. This would be the first time we actually see Jayce talking to someone from the Undercity who's still in the environment. Victor doesn't count because Victor kind of left the environment. He's now part of Piltover, the upper city. Echo is in the trenches. I mean, Jayce couldn't even understand why Victor would go back to the Undercity to look for anything or anyone, like it wasn't his former home. Anyway, Echo is younger than Jayce, unlike Heimerdinger, but he's still able to contextualize for Jayce why all of this innovation that Jayce has been working on is not always for the best for the people in the lanes. So anyway, let's get back to Jayce's story. Victor thinks it's a good idea to break the law again to create hextech. Jayce goes along with it for the vibes. Mel persuades him to aid the corrupt members of the council. Again, my boy goes along for the vibes. Vi encourages him to go rogue and become a vigilante, and he's down to do that too, trying to be a hero. But what ends up becoming valuable about the Vi incident is that it leads him to what I guess was supposed to be his life-changing moment. He ends up murking this kid while trying to destroy one of the chem tanks. At this point, we can somewhat deduce the sad reality about this character, who would otherwise be great. He wants to be liked, but in this moment, he realizes that, and he realizes where that mentality got him. Then we see Jayce grow a backbone, and he tells the council to shove it where the sun don't shine, and he fights for a diplomatic solution between them and Silco, which would grant the Undercity independence as the nation of Zorn. Of course, this never happens because Jinx decides to spoil the party just as Jayce is about to clean up his mess. And then with swiftness and with urgency, Jayce makes an even bigger mess. What am I talking about? He saves Victor, and he doesn't destroy the Hex Core, after he promised he would. He even ends up weaponizing hextech even more after Rennie attacks him, which is more of that for the greater good behavior. But that's not the point here. The point is, by saving Victor's life, he has doomed a bunch of people. And again, this is one of those things that Jayce doesn't think through. He just acts, either on emotion or on impulse or on friendship. The consequences of this time, are dire. Say what you want about how you like Victor or whatever, I like him too. But you do understand that Salo wasn't breathing in this hextech chamber, and Victor at the time was making an army of cellos. What do I mean by a cello wasn't breathing? Well, the animators almost over exaggerate what it looks like when someone breathes in that hex core chamber. You can always see the breath as this visual steamy perspiration. Cello though doesn't breathe, not once, and this is a really cool detail by the Arcane writers. So whatever the arcane power that Victor was using to keep him moving and conscious, it's not really for the greater good, as we'd put it. That arcane force is dangerous. The series name is telling you that. It's telling you that the arcane is a problem. That's what the series is about. The adaptive rune matrix that Victor fused with was said to be able to learn and adapt. But it seems that Victor's blood corrupted the item and allowed through some sort of magical virus that corrupts all hextech. What I'm trying to tell you with all of this exposition of the situation is that Victor was basically a world boss in first form. You get me? You remember when Cell came from the future in Dragon Ball Z and he's still kind of like a weak little bug and he has to power up? That's Victor right here when Jayce decides to take action. The best thing Jayce has done for the world of Runeterra is to put down his old friend in this very moment right here. You do not want the perfect Cell version of whatever Victor was evolving into. But of course, we know he's gonna survive anyway. They all in the game, right? Surely none of the characters in Arcane die, right? Jayce's heroic actions have always been predicated on pleasing or helping the people around him. But not this time. This time, he finally became the actual hero of the series. He just did what had to be done. The show writers have done their best in Act 2 to frame him as some sort of character who's lost his mind. Also frame him as the reason why things went so terribly with Vander, Isha and Jinx. But I do want you to remember this. There was a conversation that Victor and Singed had, and basically the revelation of that conversation is that Victor was running out of energy anyway. So if he had managed to transform Vander, Vander would have ended up as one of these things. Whatever these things that he's making are, these soulless screaming things that seem tied to the void, that would be our boy Vander right now. And I think that that would have been more heartbreaking for characters like Jinx and Vi. Anyway, I'm just happy that my boy Jayce is finally the hero of the series. But that could all change in Act 3. This is Lois signing off. Peace!